Welcome into this new edition of Inside the Huddle right here on High School Cube News, brought to you by Danley's Garage Builders. Brian Chimino with you once again, with Mike Clark of the Sun-Times and Beth Long of Fox Sports and Scout.com. Championship weekend is among us. Games taking place in DeKalb this weekend, and we're going to talk about those. But first, Mike, let's talk about a couple of the semifinal games. One of the big ones, Loyola in Class 8A, knocking off Stevenson 15-14. This is about the third or fourth time that a school in the postseason has gone for the two-point conversion at the end of the game, gotten it, and won. These coaches are just insane.
Yeah, you got to kind of like it because, as conservative as NFL coaches and a lot of times college coaches are, I've seen it happen quite a few times where high school coaches will get down to the end and they will go for the win every time. And the thing that it kind of amazes me is that a lot of times it actually works.
And then in Class 6A, Richards beating East St. Louis 7-6. We're talking about an East St. Louis offense, spread offense, that put up a lot of points this year.
This looked to be, kind of a tough matchup for any team from up here going down there. But Richards got that early lead 7-6 and made it stand up. They had a couple of punt blocks by Savon Robinson, one of their key defensive players as well, and that was one of the things that held up. Richards' defense has been really good in the playoffs, so, it can't be too much of a surprise that they played well there.
Let's take a look at some of the championship games taking place this Saturday. First in 5A, in DeKalb, Montini going for the 5P. Mike, we talked about this about 13 weeks ago, the possibility. It's indeed happening, and they'll be facing off Sacred Heart Griffin.
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup. Montini's the last unbeaten standing in our area. They're a different kind of a team than they have been, a little bit more defense-oriented than they have been with Dylan Thompson, the Ohio State-bound defensive end, and Niles Sykes, who's one of the top linebackers in the state. The other thing is they don't really have the run game that they've had in past years. They've always been kind of a pass-first team, but this year they're really a pass-first team. Sacred Heart, on the other hand, they set the state scoring record already, and they've still got another game to play. This is really an explosive offense. And they're, of course, coming off a really emotional game last weekend. They played Washington. Sacred Heart Griffin, is really going to be a formidable opponent for Montini, no doubt. And it's interesting, too, we got two veteran coaches. Both of these guys have been around for more than 30 years. Chris Andriano at Montini, Ken Leonard at Sacred Heart Griffin, so a couple of coaching legends there.
Let's take a look at Class 6A, where Batavia will get a chance for redemption to avenge a Week 2 loss to the previously mentioned Richard Bulldogs. That game was 31-25 in Week 2.
Yeah, I saw that game, and there's a lot of talent on the field there. Batavia is kind of been pointing toward this year. Since last year, they went 9-0 in the regular season last year, lost in the first round to Downers North, and that kind of gave them a little bit of a spark for this year. They got a really balanced attack. Micah Coffey, their quarterback, Anthony Scatia, their running back. They've got some other good players on defense, Anthony Thelk, Michael Moffitt. Richards, on the other hand, as fast a team as they've had, maybe since the glory days under Gary Corhonen. It's going to be an interesting matchup. You don't often see rematches of regular season games in the state finals, so this should be interesting.
And speaking of Richards, this week's MVP and our final football MVP is Savon Robinson from Richards. Got to give the Bulldogs some love, certainly on the MVP side, and their defense has been unstoppable, so looking forward to letting you guys know a little bit more about him.
And in Class 7A, Mount Carmel goes for the repeat, winning Class 8A last year, now in Class 7A. And they're going to face sort of a maybe undervalued Lake Zurich squad.
Lake Zurich is really maybe one of the most underrated programs in the state. They've been in the semifinals 7 out of the last 8 years. They're in the title game for the 4th time in that span. And they don't do anything really fancy. Their offense is pretty basic, but their defense is great. They don't have a lot of big kids. They've got one big-time recruit, Colton Moskell, their linebacker, is going to Syracuse. But, just very impressed. I watched them the last 2 weeks, actually, and they just do such a great job of, not making mistakes, playing within their system. And Mount Carmel, I don't know if I want to put it out there, but maybe I will. This might be Frank Lenny's best team, actually. When you look at the number of prospects they've got, in terms of the talent, this is maybe as good a team as we've seen for a while.
And finally, in Class 8A, the Loyola Ramblers will try and finish off their run where they face Naperville Central, who we mentioned came into the playoffs with 3 losses and are find themselves in the state championship game.
Yeah, both of these teams are actually coming off really emotional wins last weekend, too. We talked about Loyola getting the 2-point conversion to win. Naperville Central had a really roller coaster game, which kind of encapsulates their season. They got a pick 6 very early on to go up 7-0, and they gave up 21 straight points. And they came back and scored 20 straight points. Michael Colzo had a huge game for Naperville Central. He had the pick six. He had an interception with 12 seconds left in the end zone, and he also had a touchdown catch.
At this point, too, I've said it in previous episodes, I really think Marist was the hottest team in the state. And for Naperville Central to knock off Marist, they should be a pretty good opponent for Loyola.
Beth, before we leave into recruiting stuff.
The biggest recruiting note is St. Francis running back James Butler decided he is going to attend Nevada to play football there. Also, Providence Catholic wide receiver, he's a junior, Miles Boykin, starting to get a lot of recruiting interest. Added offers from Virginia Tech and Wisconsin, and took a visit to Notre Dame. The Irish could be close to offering, so he's going to be racking up offers in the next couple of months.
And that'll do it for this edition of Inside the Huddle right here on High School Cube News, brought to you by Danley's Garage Builders. Tune in next week for our season finale edition of Inside the Huddle right here on the site. Brian Chimino with Mike Clark and Beth Long. We'll see you guys next week.